Nice, cool. A little roll up.
Yeah.
There's a little note in here.
Next slide. We've got another slide.
No. We're gonna address the thing in the room, which is that I personally prefer the CLI for Microsoft 365. So welcome. It's November 15th, and this is Ask in Praxis. We have our whole team here today. So today's topic is we're thankful for, and we decided that the theme for we're thankful for would be community, because there are so many cool and useful community things out there. So we're going to sort of talk through some of this community things that we are very thankful for. And so when we are thinking about thankfulness, we're thinking about why we're thankful for it, how we use it in our day-to-day lives, and then useful links and information about each one of those things. And sort of as I indicated, we're going to start off with the Anderson, who is going to start us off with community content, which we are all very thankful for. Mark, tell us why you're thankful.
I'm not going to be balancing that marble on the turkey.
No.
whatever that guy was doing.
You're right. Who does that? Who does that? Why would you?
It should be right here.
Martha Stewart does that. Thank you very much.
What is the purpose of balancing a marble on the turkey?
It's a
exactly
cranberry, Todd. It's a cranberry.
All right. But enough of this nonsense.
I only recognize cranberries that are shaped like a can. That kind of like that.
You and every other man in the United States of America.
I didn't realize that a cranberry was a real thing until I was like 30.
I said the United States of America, Derek. You are not here right now. Therefore, you're exempt from my cranberry comment.
Okay.
All right. Anderson, tell us about community content.
So am I thankful? Yeah. I'm thankful that marble's balanced. So the Microsoft 365 community content is a project that has been going on for 4 years by now. Emily's helped out. A lot of people on the Sympraxis team have contributed content. It's entirely a community created set of content that we think is really good, and not enough people know about it, in my opinion. And it's been contributed by dozens of authors from all around the world. Anyone can contribute. It's ideally we're looking for content that helps people, understand how to do things in the real world, not Microsoft's marketing messages, which are often fascinating but don't always reflect the way people really use their tools. And we also have a lot of content there that crosses different Microsoft products, which is something that Microsoft does less of, though they've gotten much better at it, where you combine different tools together to come up with interesting solutions. So I use it. I don't use it every day, but I have some of the concepts embedded in my brain because there's some good basics there. There's some interesting in-depth articles about how to get stuff done. I like it.
Yeah, it is very useful, and it's a good place that people can get up to speed on things. So when they're new to the platform, there's of course lots of learning content out there, but these are different. These sort of come from that real world and answer those questions, and that can be really helpful for getting up to speed when you are just starting out on your Microsoft 365 journey. So I think that is an excellent one.
And actually, I should mention that another group of people, this got the attention of some of the documentation people at Microsoft, and now they have a wider effort going on to set up an even broader community-generated set of content, which I should get the link for and put in here. But it's proven to be a model that other people are following as well.
One thing to add is one way that people can contribute. So one of the problems I have is once I learn something, I assume it's so obvious that everybody knows it, and I never know what to talk about. But there's always new people coming to Microsoft 365. So as Mark, talks to people, but you should contribute something. Don't talk yourself into thinking you don't know enough to contribute, because there's always somebody newer in the field than you, and you just have to know one thing that they don't know to have value. So don't talk yourself out of contributing stuff.
Good point.
Cool. And embedded in that same place is the
Yes.
maturity model for Microsoft 365, which has really taken on its life of its own. It's got its own landing page in that repo. So the idea with the maturity model is that you can read the articles, try and figure out where your organization fits along a set of competencies, and then figure out how you get to the next levels and which ones actually matter to you as an organization, because not every organization should mature in the same way. So we have monthly calls for what we call the maturity model practitioners. They occur every third Tuesday at bias of my Eastern Standard Time, 10 a.m. And so we'll usually have a topic, and we'll present on that topic with one or two people talking through. We call them guest stars. Todd will be on the one next week.
Yes.
Guest stars talking about something that they have either used the maturity model for, or they have a lot of expertise in one of the competencies, and they talk through it. So I'm hoping that we get more and more people coming to those calls. They're usually pretty. I think that they're fascinating. I learn something every time, and we also are building that. So that maturity model content continues to evolve based on what happens in those calls.
And this is and this is one of those things where I don't go to all the maturity model calls, but you can't talk to Mark Anderson about anything without the phrase maturity model coming up. And I found that there are all these different ways in other parts of my life that this explains stuff that goes on. And so it hurts me a little to encourage Mark, but reading through this and just seeing it in other areas really helps. It's kind of like that whole there's always new people. There's always new people coming in because there's always people in different parts of the maturity model. So it's good to pop in once in a while, see what those folks are doing.
Yeah, and if you attend these calls regularly, you know that we often will talk about topics and frame it from the maturity model perspective, because everybody is at a different place, and how you might solve a problem sort of depends on your organization. It always is depends when you're a consultant, I suppose, but this sort of wraps that is depends statement into actual understandable logical scenarios. And so I think that's super helpful for people. So we love to see that.
Yeah, one of the things I pulled from that was, as a consultant and as a guy who does what I do, we all kind of knew about the whole crawl, walk, run thing. But in my head, it was always, you had to always, running was always the goal. Crawling and walking, you don't look down on those people. Those are just ways to get. But with the maturity model, it adds a framework for saying, in this area, we're maturity model 300, and that's okay. That's the right place for our organization to be for this particular thing. That's okay. And here's why, because it addresses these things. So it helped me understand that there are time, getting to the top isn't always the goal. Sometimes it's more appropriate to be somewhere else. So I really like that framework for understanding things.
Yeah, and
Thanks,
it's
Todd.
knowing that that. Right? It's not just assuming. It's oh, okay, I've looked at what the other options are in this area, and I have assessed that our organization is in the right place versus should be somewhere else. All right.
I think it's actually very important to say that this is very much a community effort as well. We have a core team who sort of drive those calls, but then we have people contributing content all the time. We just posted in the last month a couple of practical scenarios from Michael Blumenthal. So, this is another area where the whole community can contribute, and it really is, for one and for all, as opposed to, it's not my thing, it's our thing.
Right. Okay, Derek, tell us about Microsoft 365 Learning Pathways.
Yes. So I am super thankful for Microsoft 365 Learning Pathways, not only because I get to work with it all the time and because I help maintain the repo, but I think it is really one of the more versatile tools that are out there. And when I first started working with it, it was really about just the sort of micro training around Microsoft content. But one of the things that Emily's taught me over the years we've been working together is how to stretch it and to build custom learning playlists for your organization. So you can use it for the out-of-the-box Microsoft 365 training stuff, but also if you have a specific application that you built, like a time tracking app or a vacation request app, you can create custom learning, custom like playlists of content to teach users how to use that, and then embed it right there in the page where the application is. Also, you can build governance sites for it to show users what's allowed in your environment, what's not. One of the things that I'm really grateful for is we had sort of a period of time where we weren't getting a lot of traction from Microsoft on updated content, and I am happy to say, and I'm going to knock on wood, that we've got a lot more traction in that space right now. We had a bunch of new edits come out over the late summer and early fall with a lot of Viva content, so Viva Engage, Viva Connections, goals, and learning. That all came out over August and September. Right now, they are very fast and furious pulling together content for Copilot. I don't know what that means because there's like 3,000 Copilots. So I don't pull the content together. I just help them launch it. But I do know that that's in the works, and that's going to be out by the end of the year. So if you're using learning pathways, keep an eye out on the changelog because you will see new Copilot stuff coming out soon. And if you're not familiar with learning pathways, you can provision it for now via the Microsoft Lookbook under Solutions, and the link in the deck will take you right there. And if you're feeling adventurous or if you have any questions, you can actually use the Learning Pathways repository, and I'm generally the one that answers those questions.
Very cool. All right, let's move on to PnP PowerShell, which means that Todd gets to talk, which means blah, blah, blah.
Of all the things I'm thankful for, PowerShell is one of my favorites. So to keep in the stream of community stuff, I picked a PnP PowerShell. And for the basis for the slide, there's kind of the skeleton. It's like, what can it do? Why do we care? Blah, blah, blah. And so my first thing was, what can it do? What can it do? Like it can do everything. So when I'm talking to new clients about administrative tasks and all that, I always bring up the PnP PowerShell, and it's kind of daunting to get started on, but I always give them these list of things. Whenever new functionality comes to M365, it almost always comes into PowerShell first, long before it comes into the UI. And it generally comes into the Microsoft official PowerShell commandlets first, but the PnP team, they're always on that page hitting F5. And as soon as it shows up in one of the official commandlets, they reverse engineer it and add it to the PnP. So when you see new things come out, it's going to be in the PnP pretty quickly. Just yesterday, Mark and I were working on a thing, and we had to migrate 30 some different site collections, and there's just a bunch of steps all together, and we got it down to where Mark types one password once, and then PowerShell takes it from there and does all the things and creates this and spins wheels and all that, and it just really makes that better. When Mark first started the call, he thought he was gonna have to babysit this thing and type something 37 times and all that, but now Mark got his evening back, so it was pretty good.
And I didn't have anything to do, so it was sort of a bummer. But...
Well, next time then, you can go out, walk the dog. One of the things that, and again, I'm doing a thing for the maturity model next week, so I was very much thinking about that. But one of the things that PowerShell gives you is consistent outcomes. So if you do something in the UI, you might type the description just a little different or whatever. If you script it, then it's the same outcome every time, and it documents the thing that you're doing. And that's one of the things I like about it, because nobody likes to do documentation. And now with, we've been talking about the Copilots, all of the many dozens and dozens of Copilots. If you have GitHub Copilot and you're doing this in VS Code, you can go either way. You can type documentation, type a command in PowerShell, and GitHub will make a really good guess at what you meant to do. Or if you're doing it the other way, I've used ChatGPT and I've taken PowerShell code and I've pasted it in there and said, AI, document this for me. So you can go whatever your strength is. Of course, if you're using PnP PowerShell, your friends will find you more respectable. You'll look cooler, more attractive to the people you want to be attracted to and all that. And I use it a lot with our clients, number one, because I just like to do it. But number two, it also gives them another deliverable to take. So when we're setting an environment up for them or doing a migration or something, of course we document everything and all that, but then I give them the scripts that I used. So a year from now, if they want to look and see what I did, they can see the PowerShell. I mean, just today, Julie was working on a thing and trying to figure out what we were doing for a customer, and I'd done it all with PowerShell. So we just cracked the script open. We could see exactly what the steps were. So it works out pretty well. On the right there, we've got the official site that takes you to their landing page. You can go to GitHub or download it with PowerShell. And then that second link is all of my blog posts that have to do with PowerShell. So you can jump in there and see what I've done.
Nice, cool. A little roll up.
Yeah.
There's a little note in here.
Next slide. We've got another slide.
No. We're gonna address the thing in the room, which is that I personally prefer the CLI for Microsoft 365, which is just a command line interface that has a lot of the similar functionality. I write scripts with Bash. It's just my preferred user experience because of how I'm writing code, and it just is seamless for me to use Bash scripts instead of actually switching to PowerShell. And so that's my preferred method. But the point here is they're both community resources that you can use, whichever one is your favorite. I mean, I think the CLI for Microsoft 365 sort of came about because those fruit computer users couldn't actually run PowerShell for quite a long time. And so they needed an alternate way to do some of the scripting. Now, of course, PowerShell can be run on the fruity computers. And so, that's not as much of a need anymore, but I still think the CLI has its place, and it's super useful for those who find it more in line with how they write code or write scripts. So just wanted to point out that there is an alternative if you prefer a command line interface over PowerShell. All right.
And I will say that just this morning, I recommended the CLI to somebody because
didn't.
I did. So I will send you a screenshot because they're both community activities. But like Julie said, there was like a subset of folks that needed this. And so they've got a little bit different developer communities. So sometimes functionality will show up in the CLI before it shows up in PnP and vice versa. And those two teams, they do the synergy thing. And so a command shows up in the CLI, and I had this happen a couple of years ago. A command showed up in the CLI that didn't exist in PowerShell. So I created a GitHub thinger and said, hey, look at the CLI thing, make it happen in PnP. And it was pretty easy. So yeah, they're both really good.
That would be an issue, Todd. You created an issue.
I create issues all the time.
I wish they weren't called issues, though. That makes it sound like it's a bad thing.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. A GitHub thinger. Yes, exactly.
A Gitbug
thinger would make much more sense.
All right. Emily, tell us about our friend Kasper's PnP Modern Search things.
Absolutely.
Hi, Kasper.
So we talk about PnP Modern Search web parts all of the time. They are incredibly helpful in supporting that decentralized content management model, as well as presenting a subset of content onto your pages. So over in the right, we have a link of all of the archived Ask Some Praxis sessions where we talked about PnP Modern Search web parts. And if that's not enough to get you where you need to go, one of our favorite community members has office hours. So I linked that up at the top. Kasper, who is often in Ask Some Praxis as an attendee, is offering support for people trying to navigate using this fantastic solution.
Yep, we love that. Thank you, Kasper, for your community contribution. It is super nice for you to do that for everyone.
Warms my heart to see stuff like this.
Me
and it kind of forces me to know what I'm doing, so I have to
really get into
there
it. Is that, right?
Keeps you honest, yep.
Keeps you honest, exactly. All right, let's move on to some of my stuff. Now, there's probably not very many developers on this call, but I'm going to talk about the things that I love anyway. So that's PnPjs and hTWOo, both of which are community-led efforts that are things that I use literally daily. There are also some other PnP SDKs, and we'll sort of talk about that too. But so basically every day that I build solutions, I'm using PnPjs to help me write my queries against the SharePoint and GraphRest endpoints, and I'm using hTWOo which I help maintain with Stefan Bauer to do the display of my data. So to build my user experience, to use user interface, I use hTWOo for that. And so those two things are something I use constantly in every client-side project. And now at this point, I'm starting to use PnPjs in Node.js development on the server by building Azure functions and such things with Node.js instead. So just to keep continuity. And essentially this helps my clients because I'm going to be able to deliver faster, better solutions for them. And if you're using them in your organization, I think that would help you also deliver faster and better. So those are great tools to check out. There are a bunch of other SDKs. So if you're a C# person and that's where you like to write your code, there is SDKs, PnP Core libraries, and the PnP framework libraries that help you build your solutions in C# and help make those calling the RESTful endpoints for both Graph and SharePoint easier because they're using those SDKs. And there's some other great libraries similarly for controls, the SPFx controls, and there's a bunch of other things there. So that link there on the page for the SDKs can get you to the list of all the open source community projects around that topic. All righty, let's move on to samples and guidance. So this is an area where the PnP team, and so that right at the bottom, the all samples links has a link to all the samples available. But essentially, there's some ones we want to highlight as a team. So list formatting, Derek, I think you use this pretty regularly, or recently have been using this regularly. And this is one I would also jump right on when I have a need, because it's not something I'm going to have just in my head, like, oh, what's the list formatting JSON blob to, make stars appear next to, a number rating thing and have it turn into stars or something, whatever it might be. It's not a thing I'm just going to have in my memory. So being able to go to this list formatting site and get all of those formatting, have all those examples of list formatting things that I can just sort of use, tweak to my heart's desire and use in my solutions. Awesome repository for that. Derek, did you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, it's not just like list view formatting. It's column formatting, it's form formatting, it's view formatting. It's really robust. It's a very active repo as well, and the maintainers are constantly adding new samples of their own, as well as surfacing samples from other folks in the community. I will say, with those particularly, they're not necessarily turnkey. So you need to know JSON and you need to know what you need to do to edit it, because you need to put in form fields and stuff like that. But it's a really great use. I use it right now on one of the projects I'm working on. I'm using it on a daily basis to, customize how my forms look, because I'm building basically mini applications. So
that one is just epically powerful. Another one where Synpraxis has actually contributed a good amount to, but a bunch of other really well-known community members have contributed specifically, is the SPFx reference scenarios. So this repository, which is a little bit smaller than some of the other sample ones, is directed at sample scenarios that are very robust. They're almost production quality, and in the case of World Clock one that we did, I would say is production quality. So those are solutions that you can take, use them as they are, and or modify them so that they work in your organization by maybe adding some fields or changing some stuff around. But essentially, they're like ready to go solutions that you can sort of, finish configuring and get that functionality into your environment. So those are really deep solutions that can help you sort of build out your intranet.
Yeah, they also illustrate better practices. for how to lay things out, how to structure your projects, how to create a service, or so there's this one's a little bit more like sort of leveled up in terms of better practices.
Yep, 100%. After that is there's a SharePoint framework gallery. That one has just tons and tons and tons of samples for everything that the SharePoint framework can deliver. So we're talking web parts, application customizers, field customizers, forms, commands, etc. That you can check a look at. And I would say that one has contributions from everyone in the community. Anyone who has an idea, has built a sample, can contribute it to that repository, those repositories, because that's actually a link to multiple repositories. But it pulls all of that content together that's contributed from everywhere. I would think of that more as a ideation spot. There's no necessary like level of quality that has to be done there. Anybody can do anything any way they want to. So it's definitely something that you should look at with a little bit of an eye to, hey, how was this done? Does this follow better practices before you just use it blindly? But certainly deploying it into your dev tenant to check things out, places where you don't have to necessarily worry so much about how it might go wrong and mess with your environment is a great way to use that. And then, some of them are excellent. So, when you find one that's really good and you've reviewed it and you're like, hey, this is great code. This is, how I would do it myself. And this gives me a great idea and I'm going to sort of tweak it and make it my own. Awesome. Those are great examples of just giving people inspiration on how they can build their own solutions on the platform. So I think those are really good as well. I think
every one of the repo owners would be very thankful if people would understand the title here, samples versus guidance. And, when the community is offering samples up, whether it's in a blog post or the sample repository or whatever, it's, we're putting it out there, we collectively are putting it out there for you to be inspired by, use if you want to, adapt to your own needs, whatever. It's not necessarily something that is just going to work for you. And so the engaged brain part still has to happen. And as somebody who started putting code out in blog posts years and years and years ago, it can be hard when you're trying to help people get smarter and they just want to take. So and I'm trying to say this as nicely as possible.
Yeah, I maintain.
Look at it for what it is. It's a set of gifts, really.
Yeah, I maintain the Viva Adaptive Cards extension repository, and there are quite a few people that just sort of say, "Oh, this is working," and they'll submit an issue and say, "I need an answer now because this is in production," and it's sort of one of those things where you do need to sort of look at it and make sure that it works for you.
Yeah. So don't blindly follow. Just make sure you check them out a little thoroughly and make sure they're going to work for you.
Unless we say it, and then.
Oh well, yes.
Any sample written by me is perfect.
Cool.
Yeah, exactly. Dirk never makes any mistakes. So a set of links. We're going to definitely have these. The links will also be on our website post that we always follow up with. All the links will be there for you to click on later, but I'm sharing the slides, so you should be able to click on them live right at this very moment. And so I think that sort of wraps us up for this Thankful For session. We definitely had fun, coming up with all the community things that we were thankful for. So next time, November 29th, we'll do an Ignite 2023 recap. Also, Derek will be, wait, who else? Derek and Emily?
Just me.
No, just Derek. Derek is going to be in ESPC in Amsterdam, and Emily is launched the Microsoft 365 Community Days Miami. That's on February 2nd. Registration is open. Absolutely click that link if you want to go to Miami in February, and who doesn't? And
hang out with
check
Emily.
that out. Yeah, and hang out. we all want to do that.
Bonus.
So absolutely join us at one of those live places, and we will see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us this week on Ask Praxis. We love getting your questions or session ideas. You can submit by using the link in About. If you find this helpful, hit that like or subscribe button and share this content with your colleagues.